My name's Eli Delaney, and I have the honor of meeting some pretty cool people. These are the entrepreneurs, the artists, the creatives, the game changers that are making a positive impact in the people that they meet. And I'm a firm believer that the people that you meet can get you anywhere you want to go. And this show is my way of sharing them with you. It's my way of also helping you meet cool people. All right, welcome back. Eli Delaney here for another Meet Cool People show. And today I have an amazing cool dude I've gotten to know lately, Bernie DeSantis III. He and I actually met just kind of briefly at the Badass Business Summit this last year in Fort Worth. We didn't really get a chance to talk, but we've gotten to have a couple of Zooms since then, get to know each other. And he is the president and CEO of Insignia Training Partners. They help their clients increase the value of their people and business processes through development of effective performance-based learning solutions. Let me tell you what that actually means. Virtual training. So you got employees, you want to train them how to be better at all their stuff they're supposed to be doing. Outsource training. You want to teach other people how to do all the stuff they're supposed to do. And one of the things that, of course, grabbed my attention was virtual event production. So as somebody who does events, I do webinars. If you're doing webinars, you're doing summits, things like that. He's the kind of guy that you need to be talking to because he's the one that helps run the show behind the scenes. So you're not freaking out. So with that said, Bernie, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Eli. Glad to be here, brother.
It is such a pleasure because, we are like halfway through the hour we were supposed to have, and we've been already having a great conversation. I was like, oh crap, we need to actually stop and hit the record button here. So what did I miss on your intro? I want people to get a feel of who you are and what you do, kind of a little bit of an overview, but what else would you like people to know?
I would say that what I have on my website is, for lack of a better way of putting it, very clinical as to what we do, right? Effectively what we are is an outsource or fractional learning and development company. So we provide facilitators, instructional designers, project managers, LMS administrators, virtual producers for online events, all for organizations that maybe don't have that human capital, or maybe they don't have the skill sets internally to be able to design, develop, and deploy the training that they're looking to do internally. Most of our work is with enterprise type clients, really large organizations, but through the mutual networking group that we're part of, I came to recognize in the last year really just how underserved that market is. Whether you're a company of one or a company of a million, there's training happening every day. Either you're consuming it or you're deploying it. And in either case, Insignia can help.
Right. I love that. And it is true. Like, we're both part of Success Champions, and that's how we actually got introduced. And, one of the things that I always find, like, I come from the world of, speakers, coaches, solopreneurs, smaller businesses. Like, I run my own events. I got the cool gizmos and the gadgets and all that kind of stuff. I don't do any extra bells and whistles because I couldn't handle any more than that by myself. And you and I have had a couple of conversations about what does it take to put out a great event that's not your substandard Zoom, So let's talk a little bit about that, because I know a lot of our listeners are on that smaller base. They're not a big corporation that's got a big budget behind it. But what are some of the things that people need to think about when they're running their events?
Honestly, Eli, what I've noticed is that a lot of folks are, for lack of a better way of putting it, they're unconsciously incompetent, right? They don't know what it is that they don't know. So, if you go to some of these master classes that you see posted on LinkedIn, unfortunately, you find that the person who's running it or facilitating it, they're not even coming on camera, or they don't know where to put their microphone, and it sounds like they're talking through a fishbowl. They don't know how to leverage the breakout rooms or the polling questions or all of those other engagement features that you or I would think intuitively about using, but a lot of folks don't. And they take a very similar approach to virtual that they would to in-person lecture style keynote type training or presentation delivery. And when you're talking about virtual, that's really one of the quickest ways to get your audience to disengage with you is by being off camera, having bad audio, not leveraging all of these engagement tools that are available in the standard version of Zoom. But then you have to also think about all of the other apps that are out there, things like Miro boards and mural boards and Poll Everywhere and Kahoot. There's so many different things that you can do to bring interactivity and engagement into your virtual training that a lot of people, like I said, they just don't know what they don't know. And while they're a subject matter expert in the thing that they're talking about, if they're not finding ways to engage with the audience and bring them back into the platform, they lose them. And
Yeah.
that's really, I think, the one thing that I would stress most is that if you're going to be doing virtual events, virtual workshops, webinars, if you can't take the time to understand the tool that you're using to deliver that presentation, you got to have somebody behind the scenes kind of playing the Wizard of Oz to help you pull those levers.
Right. And you brought up a lot of really good things with that because, I think the key point is what is that engagement? Because, you brought up the fact that a lot of times when people are doing these webinars, they're doing them in the old school style of webinar where they're not on camera and it is just a slideshow. And I mean, there's been study and study and study, and we've heard people complain about this for years. You can't just do that anymore. Nobody wants that. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't use slides. You can use slides, but it is that interaction that makes a difference. And like from my standpoint, a lot of times if I'm a guest speaker for, say, a summit or something like that, and somebody's, even if I have slides, I've got multiple monitors here and I'm watching the chat and I'm telling people, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be asking some questions. Pop it in the chat. My chat is right here. I'm looking at it. So I want to have some talking going on. And I always joke with the fact that it's like, if I'm in person and I'm speaking on stage, I always tell people is like, just so you know, as we get started here, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to require you to respond because if you don't, I'm going to get real twitchy. And virtual is the same thing.
It is.
It's like you got to have that animation, that interaction with them, but you can do that virtually. And a lot of times people don't realize that. And that's of course where somebody like you, I'm assuming you can not just run the show for people to help them with all the techie stuff behind the scenes, which I know there's a lot going on. A lot of people are not near as techie as you and I are, but also someone there to coach them through how to create that interaction.
Yep.
Is that, let's talk about that a little bit. What kind of stuff are you doing with clients when they come to you? Because if I remember correctly, don't you help them prep through the entire thing and do dress rehearsals essentially,
Yep.
don't we?
That is correct. Yeah. So our service, the package that we use is, we will meet with them 2 to 3 weeks before the event is scheduled to actually kick off. And we'll go through a strategy and planning session very specifically on how they are going to engage. Right. So I mentioned all of those different features that are available within Zoom. Again, a lot of people, they don't know how to use them or what settings to use within those features. So we'll go through all of those different things. We'll identify within their presentation, especially if they are using a deck, where they can integrate, let's say, polling questions or annotations or chat prompts. And we'll cue them throughout the course of that meeting to say, okay, when you get to slide 22, this is where you want to ask them a question where they can drop that answer into chat. And then you'll pay attention for that. And then you'll build on whatever those comments are. Then about a week before the event, we'll meet with them again to go through and review all of those engagements, see if they had any other thoughts or ideas pop into their head between the first meeting and the second meeting. And at that point, we'll do an actual dressed rehearsal. We will go through the entire presentation, launching every feature that they'll want to use within the platform to make sure that not only do we know that it works properly, but they know what to expect during the day of the event. Nothing is worse than, getting a polling question pop up in the middle of your screen and you don't know what it should look like or what it should be doing or how it should operate while you're giving that presentation. The next step is that we'll actually log on 30 minutes before the event with them to do a tech check, right? You have to make sure that the video is working. You have to make sure that the audio sounds good. Again, running through all of those settings and features. We'll then run their event for them, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, or whatever that might be. And then the last stage is a formal debrief. So we'll stay on with them 30 minutes after the event. Sometimes there's going to be some overage for people who have questions or additional commentary. But that last 30 minutes is all about what worked, what didn't work. If we were going to do this event again, how would we change it to improve it? And really, it's a full cycle all the way through from, initial setup all the way through to completion and, evaluation. How did that event land? And if it landed really well, fantastic. We did our job and we covered everything that we were supposed to. If it didn't, well, we're going to walk away with some best practices or some suggestions as to how to improve the next one, so the next one lands exactly the way that it's supposed to.
Got it. And I love the reason I ask these questions is because then as you talk, I'm coming up with, okay, here's some points that people need to be listening to. By the way, for those of you that are listening to this, go back and listen to everything he just did one more time, because whether you go forward and reach out to Bernie and say, hey, okay, I could use your help or not, he just told you what you need to do. This is the process of an event. And so many people, they jump on, especially it's like, okay, we're in this world of, I just need to do an event. We're going to do an event. That's great. But they just jump on, don't think it through, don't plan for the things that they should be doing, and they're just winging it. And as somebody's like, I don't know if you and I talked about this before, but I come from a performance background. I come from a music background. So I know what a show, a performance should look like.
Right.
So I had that advantage because when I go into speaking on stage or doing an event, it's the same process. It's just different materials. You're not singing, you're not performing a show, but it's still a performance.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that you brought up is you're talking about all the gizmos and the gadgets, all the different features that, say, if you're using Zoom has a lot of really cool things. And now more and more platforms are out there. It's like I love Wave. Wave is what I'm using for this program right here. It does a lot of great tools, but as we go through, we realize there's all these features and all these things that we can do with it. Should people that are just starting out be doing all those things?
That is a really great question. I mean, the ambitious people, I would say yes. However, you have to take the time to practice and truly understand what's going to happen on screen for your participants. So, I'll take a really simple one like polling questions. A lot of people don't use it, but it's a great engagement tool to do a quick temperature check or a knowledge check throughout the course of your event. But if you don't know how to set it up and use it, it's going to land flat. So you absolutely have to take the time to truly understand and know the tool that you're using, right? Think in terms of like a carpenter as an example. If he doesn't know how to use both sides of his hammer, well, you're probably not going to have the house built the way that you want. And it's the same thing with these virtual engagement tools. If you don't know how to operate it and how to leverage it appropriately, it's not going to build the house that you want it to build. So you have to take that time to learn it, whether that's, going and on YouTube and watching some videos or working with someone like you or I who does understand them and can teach you how to use them. But honestly, the key is in the practice, in the rehearsals, understanding what it's going to do in real life, not just in theory.
Yeah. Well, and I was telling you before we started recording, we were talking about this platform that I'm using, that, I went through and I did a crash course on it with a couple of clients, and they're like, can you help me with this stuff? I'm like, yeah, you're going to help me, but instead of jumping on Zoom, we're going to jump on this other platform. And I'm like, just keep asking questions. We'll go through everything, but I'm going to push a bunch of buttons. So don't freak out when everything screws up. And I sat there and I basically learned the software right at that point. And I think that that's something a lot of people don't spend enough time doing, is going through. And all you need to do is get one or two people that will be willing to let you go through your presentation with you in a active environment, just like you would if you were actually doing it live. So you can really get a feel for the software and the platform.
Yep, absolutely true. And it's actually quite amazing, Eli. We're 4 years post-COVID now, right? And you would think that most people have been on a few Zooms or run a few Zooms so that they understand what's happening. But I can tell you a large majority of the clients that I work with, they will often tell me that the first time they're working with me is the first time that they are setting up and running a Zoom event. And they either will want to use those features and don't know how, or again, they are unconsciously incompetent. They don't even know that they exist. And it really is key. If you don't know the platform that you're using, you are very likely, unfortunately, to crash and burn. And I understand, there's a lot of folks that are subject matter experts, and they can get on stage and they can talk about taxes and accounting or finance or cars or whatever they're a subject matter expert in, and deliver a really great presentation. But again, you have to understand the tool. And those folks, those subject matter experts, oftentimes they don't have the time or desire to go in and learn all of the features that they would be able to use. But it is absolutely imperative that you do. You have to take the time to understand the platform, or again, have somebody to support you that does.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna shift gears a little bit because we talked about the actual software, but you brought up something earlier that I think is really important. We need to talk about it. I know from my experience, this has been tucked to death, but so many people seem to not be listening. So let's talk about your video and your audio. Okay. Let's start with audio. It's hard to explain how I want to ask this question because it's a major pet peeve of mine that when people get on, they're running their shows, they're doing their events, their master classes, their webinars, whatever, and their audio is just horrible. And it's because they're using the built-in mic in their MacBook Pro.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. What are your thoughts? What are some of the things people can do? And even, if you want to recommend a basic mic that's not too expensive, people can get started with that actually gets respectable quality, because even respectable, it doesn't have to be fancy, right? But let's get them to the point of at least being respectable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, first and foremost, I'll say this. People will put up with bad video. They absolutely will not put up with bad audio. If you sound terrible, that's a really fast way to get most of your attendees to exit the event, unfortunately. When you're talking about the actual devices, right, within their laptop or within their desktop, oftentimes the equipment that is used as the stock or the base for that laptop or device, it's provided by the cheapest bidder, if you will, right? Just like most government projects, it's the cheapest bidder gets to put their product forward. So, the camera and the microphone that are within your laptop, they are not typically of very high quality. Now, if that's what you're working with, that's okay. There are ways that you can make it a little bit better, right? So when you're on camera, as an example, you always want to try to have your camera at about eye level. So if you're working with a laptop, you don't want to be hunched over and looking down on it. You want to raise it up a little bit, maybe put a couple of books underneath it or magazines to raise that level up. The picture quality, there may not be a whole lot that you can do about that because, again, it is an internal device that's provided, but simply raising the elevation of it so that you're looking at the camera, because that simulates eye contact, makes a huge difference in how that you're received. Now, from a microphone perspective, again, same situation. Oftentimes they're putting in the cheapest quality component that they can find just to make it work with that laptop. But there are some things that you can do. First and foremost, just use a headset, right? Whatever came with your most recent phone purchase, that is likely going to provide you with better quality audio than just using the device that is included with the laptop. Now, I personally use a Blue Yeti. There are a lot of people who actually poo-poo Blue Yetis, but I found it to be a really, really reliable piece of equipment. There's several settings on there where you can hone in the wave range, right? So where it's focusing on and picking up audio from. It's not a super expensive device. It's, maybe $100 to $200 for the base version, but the quality of audio from that versus what's included in your laptop is light years difference. Now, if you do have some funds to be able to spend, there are, cameras and microphones that cost thousands, tens of thousands of dollars that you can use, and they'll make you sound like you're in, a music studio. But most people don't have those type of funds to spend, especially as they're just getting started. But what I will say is this: even if you don't have any money to buy extra stuff, just where you place your camera and where you place your microphone and testing it out makes a world of difference. I can't tell you how many people have shown up and they have never recorded themselves in a Zoom to understand and play back that audio so they understand the quality of it. Mm-hmm. They sound like they're talking through a fishbowl and they don't even know.
Yeah, and you just covered a bunch of different things in there. So I'm gonna unpack a couple of those that I want people to really pay attention to. Going back to your microphone. Number one, you just said something really important. I want to say this before I forget. A lot of people don't realize you could record a Zoom by yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at putting together a presentation, get on Zoom just by yourself, hit record, and just record 2 or 3 minutes and then stop, end it, and go watch the recording.
Yep.
See what you look like, see what you sound like.
Absolutely.
Because when you do that, you're going to be like, oh, these are things that need to change. And you brought up the Yeti, which I think is hilarious because you're right. A lot of people go down against it. That's the same one that I'm running. When I bought this was actually, that was like the go-to mic for most people that are going to do podcasting or Zoom kind of stuff. And one thing that a lot of people don't think of, you brought up, there are settings. A lot of people don't take the time to learn the settings of their microphone.
Yep.
Go to YouTube. Like, first off, there's usually a manual of some sort, but on top of that, go to YouTube and just like how to set up my blank microphone, whatever kind of is, like a Blue Yeti microphone. They'll show you what to do because, like you said, the Yeti, it has a whole bunch of different settings.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people don't realize what that looks like. I knew because I come from a music background.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the different, can't think of the right term for it, patterns.
Yeah,
Yep. Whether you want it to be directional, non-directional, blah, blah, blah. There's about 4 or 5 different settings there. I knew what it stood for because I come from a music background. So I know that. Most people don't even understand, and they don't read the manual. They don't check the basics, and literally click the switch 1 degree could all of a sudden make you sound from that fishbowl that you're talking about to really sharp, really fast.
Absolutely.
So those are the kind of things that I love. I'm glad that you brought that up because those are such simple things. What else are presentation etiquette kind of things that you think that people should know about? Because we could sit and talk about the technical side for a long time. Yeah. I'm not even going to go into the whole video side but just as one little side note for anybody watching this, the camera that I use is a Logitech C920 or 922, something like that. It's like $60-$70, and they're great cameras for very inexpensive.
Yep.
Of course you can go better, but that compared to the one built into my MacBook Pro, night and day difference. Yep. So you don't have to spend a lot of money, but a little bit can go a long ways. So now going back to the question, as somebody is like, what are some of the other presentation glitches or presentation things people should be aware of when they're doing their shows? Like, okay, how they interact, looking at the camera. That's one thing that, I would love for you to touch on that, because that's always one of the things that we always like. You got to look at the camera part, those kind of things. What are some of the top 2 or 3 things that you see people make the mistake of, that when you're doing your debrief with your clients, what are some of those 2 or 3 things that usually come up quite a bit?
One of the first things that I always mention to people, especially if they're used to delivering in-person type events, is to check their energy level, right? Because a lot of times when you go to an in-person event, you got the adrenaline flowing, you're able to see all of the participants as you're walking into the room. So you kind of know what's about to happen. A lot of times with virtual events, people may register but may not show up. And so you kind of have that little uneasiness about you. What I always recommend to my clients is that, imagine that you're going into a live in-person event, right? And you know that you're going to bring your energy level at 100%, right? You're top tier. Well, when you come into a virtual event, you need to almost go another 15 or 20% above and beyond that, right? Because when we're talking about communication, right, we all know that it's words, it's your tone, it's your physiology. And if you're familiar with the model, you know that a majority of your communication, the message that you're delivering, is delivered by your body language, your physiology. But I see so many people who come on camera and they sit just stoic. They won't move. They won't use their hands. They won't shake their head. They won't even smile. And it is so disengaging and so disingenuous, because that's not them. If they were in a live in-person event, they'd be walking the stage, they'd be going down the aisles, they'd be interacting with people, maybe putting your hand on someone's shoulder as you're making a point. You still need to do those things in a virtual environment. Obviously, you're going to be doing it a little bit differently because it's virtual and not in person, but you still need to be thinking along those lines, right? How do you deliver your message at a super high energy level? Because it is engaging. And when you're talking about a virtual environment, you mentioned earlier, Eli, that you have multiple monitors that you work from. I'm working from 7 monitors. And the reality is most people who are working from home are working from more than one monitor. And so that means that there is at least one, if not multiple, other instances where people can get distracted by email, by Teams, by LinkedIn, by Slack, by whatever it is that they have on those other monitors. And if you yourself are not engaging on camera, leveraging all of these tools that brings people back to the platform, you're going to miss out and people are going to disengage. They're going to go and do other things. But the number one thing is your energy level and how you're communicating. Again, if you're talking about that model, body language absolutely communicates. And if you're not engaging it, even in this virtual where they can only see from your armpits to the top of your head, they will disengage, right? That is an engaging thing to do. Now, you mentioned looking at the camera. I honestly have a terrible, terrible habit of watching myself when I'm on camera. I can't help it. I just want to look at myself and see what I'm doing. But the reality is, if you really want to engage with your participants, you need to take the time to look into the camera periodically, because just like in person, you want to look your participants in the eye when you're communicating with them.
Yeah.
And looking at the camera simulates that for them. So you absolutely have to occasionally look up at the camera, away from your deck and away from your presentation, to engage with your participants. And that brings me to the third point. Don't put your presentation and your notes on a side monitor, because every time you look away, you're now facing away from your camera, away from your microphone. You're losing audio quality, you're losing video quality, and it disengages with your audience. If at all possible, have your presentation directly in front of you, right underneath your camera. So that way you're always looking right there at your camera. You're always directing your audio right at your microphone. Can't tell you how many times that happens.
Those were some amazing tips. Again, I'm going to go back. If you didn't pay attention, come back and listen to that again. Write those down because those are powerful. That is one of the things that I actually learned too, is that I will have any monitoring related stuff like the Zoom, if I'm doing a Zoom type of thing, is over on the side monitor, but my notes of what I need to go through are right here in front of me because that's where my camera is. So when I'm looking down, I'm like skimming that as opposed to going like this. And, that is one of the big things that they're such little things, but they're huge things. So I love that.
Significant impact. Absolutely.
Yeah, they really do. All right. You have given a ton of great tips and tricks. Now, I am going to say that you gave us a lot to go with for people that are getting ready to just do this, and they're doing it on their own, which is awesome. I appreciate that. But people are going to definitely be like, all right, I think I need some help with this. So in a second, I'm going to have you share your link. So what is it, easiest way for people to get a hold of you. But as we start wrapping up here, this is the Meet Cool People show. So I would love to hear, what does Meet Cool People mean to you?
Well, Eli, I've been networking for a little while, and I run a Success Champions networking group. We're a national B2B group, and that is actually one of our core principles when we're evaluating new members is this an individual who is quote unquote cool? And what we mean by cool is, would you go and have dinner with that person and have a couple of hour conversation? Would you go and have a beer with that person after work? Do you have alignment with who they are as an individual, right? Because those are the type of things that make, in my mind, a person cool. Is, do I actually want to hang out with them? And, the reality is that people don't want to, I hope I can say this on this recording, people don't want to work with a dick. They don't want to hang out with that person. Right. And so meet cool people. That's what it means to me is will I be able to, aside from the work we're going to do together and be successful with, will I enjoy hanging out with that person? Because if I'm working on a year-long project with somebody and they're not cool, that sucks.
That is perfect. I love it. And we've all been there before. We've ended up finding somebody was not as cool as we thought they were going to be. Yeah. So awesome. All right. So for those that want to hear more from you, what is the easiest way for people to get a hold of you?
Truthfully, the best way to connect with me is going to be on LinkedIn. If you just search for Bernie DeSantis, there are some other ones out there, but you'll know me by the mustache, of course.
Yeah, definitely. For those of you that are on the audio, we'll just give a little disclaimer on there. Look for the mustache. When you get there, you'll know what we're talking
You will
about.
know. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, Bernie, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. Great stuff. I knew it was going to be soon. I mean, we've had a couple, like 2-3 calls above, anything else. And every time we like max out our minutes, we're both sitting there going, oh crap, I need to get to the next call. Dang it. I don't want to now. So we have a great time. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today, my friend.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Eli.
And that wraps up another Meet Cool People show. Now, if you like what you heard, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, or review so I can help introduce these amazing cool people to even more amazing cool people. And just remember, meeting cool people is just the beginning. You need to have a system in place to follow up with the amazing people that you meet. This is exactly what we do for our clients. If you'd like to see if my team and I can help you, go to followuprockstar.com and check out the case study video to see exactly how we're helping our clients turn casual connections into cash clients for life. Again, go to followuprockstar.com and we'll see how we can work together to turn you into a follow-up rockstar.